So I want to talk about neuroticism in this video, because this is something that I think that we in the men's rights movement should be more aware of. And I also want to offer a bit of analysis and insight into a well-known division between two sides within the men's rights movement. So we have Bernard Chapin, Rocking Mr. E, the Critical G, and others on one side, and then we have Paul Elam, the AVFM community, and Barbarossa and his followers on the other side. Obviously, I'm generalizing here and lumping many different perspectives together in order to get two sides, but bear with me. There's been a lot of arguing back and forth between both sides on certain issues, but I really think that there's more agreement than there appears to be. And while there are real disagreements, I think that both sides are largely just arguing against straw man positions. One thing that they appear to disagree about is the political left and political correctness. And another thing that they appear to disagree about is traditionalism. I'm going to start with the topic of so-called leftists. So this is going to be all about neuroticism and social justice crusaders. Uncle Bern frequently warns his viewers against supporting leftists. Chapin has talked repeatedly and at length about leftists, and sometimes uses other words for them like freaks, radicals, drones, losers, kitty cats. Generally though, he's talking about a personality type, not a political position per se. Because, as he has repeated ad nauseum, a leftist always tries to be mysterious about their political views. They're just nihilistic utopians. And that might seem like an oxymoron, but it's really not. His idea of the leftist personality is someone who doesn't really know or care about political positions, abstract ideas, or logic. All they care about is emotion. They try to confuse and attack. And even though they're driven by jealousy, they also tend to be very smug and self-righteous as well. I've noticed for a while now that feminist activists and supporters tend to exhibit signs of borderline personality, histrionic personality, and narcissism. So I do believe that there's a personality associated with feminism. But at first, I didn't really see the connection that Chapin was trying to make between personality and political affiliation. And I thought it was weird that he always talked about leftists in terms of personality traits rather than concrete political ideas. You'll hear people on the AVFM side also talking about utopians, ideologues, bigots, and statists in the exact same manner though. At this point, I do agree with him that there's a certain personality type that gravitates towards the Marxist feminist and or radical feminist ideology. I don't have objective empirical evidence to support this, but I would say that my life experience confirms that there is a certain personality that's attracted to the left-wing political ideologies like feminism and Marxism, just like a moth to a light bulb. So here I'm going to try to characterize that personality of the social justice crusader. Although many people who are not generally regarded as left-wing could also have this personality, think Westboro Baptist Church, and most people who regard themselves as being on the left would not have this personality at all. It still does tend to be a characteristic of left-wing activists. So perhaps calling them leftists is a little bit misleading, but it's not too misleading. Anyhow, personality psychologists have identified 5 independent factors, or dimensions, which we can use to characterize people and capture a lot of their personality. Openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion and introversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Neuroticism is the tendency to experience unpleasant emotions easily, such as anger, anxiety, depression, or vulnerability. It's characterized by anxiety, moodiness, worry, envy, jealousy, anger, and depression. Neurotic people are more likely to experience these negative emotions, and they don't respond well to stressors. They're more likely to interpret ordinary situations as threatening and minor frustrations as hopelessly difficult. They're often self-conscious and shy, and they may have trouble controlling urges and delaying gratification. Chapin does have a lot more to say about his concept of the leftist personality that goes beyond neuroticism, but I still think that neuroticism pretty much covers most of it. So just imagine that you rank the entire population on some measure of neuroticism. Then you could classify, say, the top 5% as neurotics. These would be people who just have no sense of humor, who can't handle rejection, who are chronically resentful and jealous, who can't handle even minor criticism, and who tend to be very fake or glib, and who have the hypocritical tendency to be unable or unwilling to control themselves, but who also want to control and boss around everyone else around them. They're no good with problem solving, but they're good at finding problems. Think about people who you know who are kind of like that. How many of them are feminists or other social justice warriors? Chapin has political opinions. He has ideas, and he's open to alternative ideas and perspectives. This is what I think his detractors at AVFM don't seem to understand. They seem to think that he's closed-minded or stubborn or dogmatic, but he isn't. He likes to argue about political ideas, but he also knows from experience that he just can't debate with so-called leftists, that is, people who have neurotic personality. He understands that while people who don't have a leftist personality can adopt or promote leftist ideas, or entertain any ideas, but he also understands that abstract ideas are irrelevant to the leftist, because leftism is really just about confusion, emotions, relationships, and an overall sheepish collectivist mindset. You really can't debate with a lot of feminists or leftists in general, because it's really never about ideas for them. It's about emotions and relationships. They can't separate ideas and opinions from their relationships and their social status. Everything is social relationships and emotional reactions. They don't want to argue points, they just want to attack people. They just want to put you in jail or get you fired. That's it. From here on in, I won't call them leftists, I'll just refer to them as neurotics. Uncle Bern has been trying to prevent AVFM from being inundated with a wave of neurotics. And he had Dean Esme, Christina Hansen, Victor Zen pegged as neurotics. He's concerned that ideas will be replaced with relationships, and independent thought replaced with groupthink, or, group therapy. Anyhow, I agree with AVFM's policy of not taking any political positions, insofar as they don't directly concern gender politics. But I also agree with Chapin's policy of educating people about the entrenched misandry and gynocentrism of the political left, and about how all branches of the cultural Marxist social justice tree contain the same flawed ideas, and how they all mutually reinforce each other. I also agree that negotiation requires being flexible and ambiguous about who you support and who you don't support. It's one thing to figure out and know for ourselves who we support and who we don't, and it's another thing to let other people know that we've made up our mind or that we've made a commitment. We do need to be flexible, and we do need to keep politicians guessing so that we can have more of an influence. Chapin wants to educate first and foremost, and AVFM wants to grow and recruit first and foremost, and these goals do appear to conflict. The strategy at AVFM appears to be more about reaching out to and including as many people as possible, and then changing minds gradually towards individualism. Whereas Chapin is more blunt and direct, and impatient, but I really don't see much difference in terms of their opinions and their ideology. Now, on to the second issue of contention: distancing ourselves from traditionalists. We are not traditionalists. I think that this is a simple statement that both Chapin and AVFM can agree on. Suppose that someone calls you a witch. You can either choose to distance yourself from witches by going on a witch hunt and making accusations, blaming problems on witches, and hating on them, just to make sure that people really get the idea that you're not a witch. Or you could just deny it and say that you don't know any witches, you've never seen a witch, or that you don't believe that they exist, or that they're just not worth talking about. You see, feminists believe in a thing called traditionalists, and they have trouble seeing beyond the feminist-traditionalist dichotomy. To a feminist, feminism is progress, feminism is the future, anything else is the past. They seem to think that all people who oppose feminism are traditionalists. We know that that's not true, though. I had my suspicions when I first decided to become an activist in the men's movement. I already knew that feminism wasn't really what most people thought it was, and so it occurred to me that anti-feminism would also be different from what most people thought it was. I had a hunch that most MRAs were somewhat like me, so when I first joined antimisandry.com, I decided to post a poll to see if I was right, and my suspicions were overwhelmingly confirmed. The desire to empower and liberate women was something that we had in common with feminism, or at least the stated goals of feminism. But holding women responsible and accountable was what really set us apart from feminism. Chapin's strategy is just to say, who cares? Why talk about traditionalism? I don't know any traditionalists, and I don't associate with any traditionalists. And the AVFM strategy is to blame traditionalists for every problem that men and women face, to show how much they dislike traditionalists. Traditionalism causes cancer. There's a traditionalist under every rock. While Chapin sees a neurotic under every rock and blames them for everything that goes wrong, Chapin's like, what traditionalists? I don't see any traditionalists. I think that the basic message is the same, though. The basic message is, we are not traditionalists. And I support that message, and I agree with that message. Now, before I go, I've been talking with Cootie, the mystical rodent activist, and Cootie really wants to make another video. Cootie is considering either doing a video about the foundations of morality or the foundations of femininity. And Cootie wants to know which of these topics you would be most interested in. So which one shall it be?